It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Rico Brogna, episode number 559. The Mets defeat the Miami Marlins and force their fans to actually watch a Brewers-Reds game clinging to their playoff lives. That's the situation we're in. And if you're hanging out with us live, we said this the other day. We are starting the Rico Brogna in the seventh inning of the Reds-Brewers game, with the Reds leading by a score of 7-4. And I swear to God, about 5 minutes before we started the podcast, the Brewers down 7-4, had the bases loaded for Joey Ortiz. And all I could think about during that at-bat was that if Joey Ortiz was facing the Mets, if Joey Ortiz was facing any reliever, Tyler Rogers, in a big spot with a 3-run lead, it was a lock that Joey Ortiz was hitting a triple up the alley to tie the game. But against the Cincinnati Reds, he taps out to first base. The fact that we're in this situation, the fact that we're bemoaning Joey Ortiz at bats against the Reds bullpen, it's the Mets' fault. They put us in this spot. There are countless games over the course of the first 161 that they played that we can look at and say, if they won that game, or they won this game, or they won that game, or Mendy did this, or Mendy did that, or the offense didn't go to sleep, or the starting pitching got through 3 innings instead of 2, we wouldn't be in the position we're all in, which is clinging to hope and help from a team that we sent home last year in the Milwaukee Brewers. We'll spend more time on their scenarios for Sunday and the situation for Sunday, but let's start off with what was a very good Met victory. I feel almost weird calling it a very good Met victory because at the end of the day, the fact that they needed this win, the fact that we were desperate for a win is a sad state of affairs. But what I'm going to try to do, at least for the next few minutes while talking about game 161, is I'm going to eliminate all the bad thoughts and all the desperation and all they need the Brewers to help them. And this sucks that they were in this spot. I'm going to look at this baseball game. And this baseball game was the best of Clay Holmes that we have seen all year long. And I think our biases towards the way the Met rotation has crumbled and the way they've been dependent on Clay Holmes has probably clouded the fact that Clay Holmes just completed a very successful transition to the rotation. And it's tough to see through the fog. It's tough to see through the lousy starts over the last few months, but the man went out and made 31 starts with 2 bullpen appearances, and he ended up finishing with a 3.5 ERA, and he ends up throwing 165 and 2/3 innings. And when we were sitting here in March and February trying to predict what Clay Holmes would be, and one of the things we always stressed was it really is going to depend on everybody else on where the Mets are going to need Clay Holmes. Like there was a scenario, especially early in the season when the Met rotation was pitching well, where we looked at Clay Holmes and said, boy, they could just move him to the bullpen. There were a lot of scenarios where Clay would have a successful year, but the Mets would just need him more in a 7th or 8th inning role. Well, the way things turned out, and it was a roller coaster, the Mets, of course, need every bit of starting pitching they can get. And the starting pitching has obviously been a nightmare for the last 3.5 months. And Clay Holmes has not been perfect. But when you look at the 162, or in his case, the 31 starts, it's tough to call this anything other than like a solid success. And I think the other thing is when they signed him, if we were being reasonable, we viewed him as a middle to back of the rotation arm. And a middle to the back of the rotation arm, making 31 starts, throwing 165 innings, and having a mid-3 ERA is a really big success. So let's not, in fairness to Clay Holmes, who deserves many platitudes today, let's not rip him because Sean Manaea has sucked this season. Let's not rip him because Kodai Senga couldn't pitch a complete season. Let's not crush him for Frankie Montas being non-existent. The fact is, Clay Holmes ended up having a pretty good transition into the rotation. We'll spend a lot of time in the offseason talking about his role next year. But what he did in this game with the Mets back squarely against the wall, with them not only needing a win, but needing like a halfway decent start, because you go into this game realizing the Mets have to win today and they've got to win tomorrow. Forget the crossing of the fingers part. That's obvious. They have to win 2 games. And they're playing 2 games with literally no pitching. I mean, honestly, even after the game, Carlos Mendoza couldn't announce a starter for 162 because they had to talk about it. They had to think about it. So you're not only making a start in which, yeah, you need to give your team innings to win this game, but how much is it going to affect the next day? A part of why when I sat here doing the Rico less than 24 hours ago, it felt so difficult to imagine them winning 2 games was, how are they getting these outs? Like, where are these outs coming from? How are they recording 54 outs? Well, they got 18 of them out of Clay Holmes. So it wasn't just, can Clay Holmes pitch them to a win that they need to keep their season alive, but can he go deep enough into a game to where he doesn't burn out the bullpen or cause Mendy to have to go to starters on Saturday that he may want to use on Sunday? And from jump, the guy was brilliant. He was getting ground ball after ground ball. He was throwing his fastball a lot. He was pounding the strike zone. He did have a couple of kind of issues with control late, the back-to-back walks to the 8-9 hitter in the 5th inning. But in the rare moments where Clay Holmes had to make a big pitch, and there weren't many, but there were a few, in the 3rd inning after he got the first 2 outs, again, barely breaking a sweat, barely throwing any pitches, he walks the 9th place hitter, Heriberto Hernandez, and gives up a base hit to Xavier Edwards. And at that point in the game, it's a 2-0 game, tying runs on base. I mean, bad stuff can happen. And he got Jacob Marcy to pound one into the ground, got good defense behind him from Jeff McNeil, which is nice to see. So his first pressure point, he answered with a big ground out. In the 5th inning, same spot basically, walks back-to-back hitters, the 8-9 hitters, sets up a big spot against Xavier Edwards, same score, 5th inning, 2-0, makes a big pitch and gets a ground out to Jeff McNeil. And the way I viewed this game, and it helped that they were able to get that run early, Pete Alonso's RBI double, was I understood Gary Cohen's point of have the bullpen ready. Like, do not let Clay Holmes implode, because we've seen this from Clay, where he'll look sharp for a couple of innings, and then very quickly bad stuff happens. So the way I would have handled it, and I think Mendy pretty much did, was, yeah, there's 2 guys on base in the 3rd inning. I'm starting to get worried. At that point, am I warming somebody up? Sure. You got to treat this like Game 7 of the World Series, and you can't fully trust Clay Holmes. Because one of the issues with Clay is that, yeah, 3 good innings, and then what happened in the 4th? 4 good innings, what happened in the 5th? So I wanted to go, especially once they got to the 5th inning, batter to batter. I appreciated that he didn't pull him with Xavier Edwards up with 2-1 and 2 out. I think he deserved that opportunity to get through it. And then in the 6th inning, in which I was thrilled that Mendy allowed him to come out for the 6th inning, because you never know. I mean, you don't. The guy pitched a few days ago, not that that should matter. It was basically a throw day. I don't know how quickly Carlos was going to go to this bullpen. A relatively refreshed bullpen. So I love the fact he allowed him to start the 6th inning. And quite frankly, I think I would have allowed him to start the 7th. I get why Mendy pulled him. 78 pitches. I got 6 brilliant innings out of the guy. Only gave up 1 hit. Let me trust the guys I trust in my bullpen, which he used today, Raley, Rogers, and Diaz, instead of pushing Holmes. I think I would have pushed Holmes batter. Like, I would have allowed him to start the 7th inning. It probably would have meant that they wouldn't have gone to the bench with Augustine Ramirez. So you kind of knew it was a chess match in that if you keep Clay in, the lefty bats are still going to be there. As soon as you go to Raley, they'll go to the righties. I'm not even worried about the platoon matchups. It's more, how much more can I get out of Clay Holmes? And at that point, I've got myself a 3-0 lead in the 7th inning. I think I would have gone batter to batter. But it's one of those critiques I can't kill, because Brooks Raley, and this is where one area where David Stearns doesn't have to take a lot of heat from us. He'll take a lot of heat for 99.9% of the other crap he put on the field this year. But signing Brooks Raley turned out to be one of the most important moves this man would make, besides the obvious, like adding Juan Soto or keeping Pete Alonso. Brooks Raley has been so freaking good, especially coming off of Tommy John surgery where you don't know what to expect. And he comes in, strikes out Ramirez, gets Wagenman to fly out, gets Lopez to fly, barely breaks a sweat. 1, 2, 3 inning. Same thing from Tyler Rogers. I know that Tyler Rogers has not been as good as we had hoped, but he's still a guy you relatively trust. He comes in, pitches a 1, 2, 3 inning. And all the while, the Mets were giving us signs offensively that we were going to regret certain things because much like on Friday, when they missed out on opportunities early against Sandy Alcantara, it felt a little similar in this game. Like Pete gets the big RBI double, which was great to get that first run and give them an early 1-0 lead. And after Brendan Nimmo bloops that little base hit to left field and steals second, he got second and third and 1 out. And we're all thinking the same thing, which is learn from the mistakes of the previous night. Drive at least one of those runs in. That's what I'm thinking. With Starling Marte at the plate, you got second and third and 1 out. Hit the ball deep enough to the outfield. At least make it 2-0. Anything short of 2-0 is going to be a massive disappointment. And Marte, unfortunately, hits a lazy fly ball to left field. And I'm not going to kill Sarboff for not sending Alonso because that is the ultimate second guess. Who knew? Unless the scouting report says Heriberto Hernandez is lazy on throwing balls into the infield on sac fly opportunities, who knew Heriberto Hernandez was basically going to lollipop it in? I had no idea. Where that ball was hit, and with Pete Alonso's lack of speed, there's no way you send him on that play. You're asking yourself to run out of the inning. You have to trust, which I know is tough to do, the next hitter, Jeff McNeil, to come through with a big hit. Spoiler alert, he didn't. And then when he struck out looking, he had a hissy fit. Which we're all getting sick of. I mean, honestly, just perform, bro. You know, Paul O'Neill had hissy fits all the time, but he was Paul O'Neill. You're Jeff McNeil. You've done nothing for the last month. You've cooled off. He would get a big hit later, which I'll get to. But I'm just giving you my emotions when he struck out looking. And weren't we all thinking the same thing? Especially before Clay Holmes had even thrown a pitch. It's 1-0, and much like the previous night, you felt like they needed more. Now, luckily, 2 innings later, Pete Alonso, and this is going to be the first time I've done this on the Rico, he had a Piazza-esque home run, and it wasn't an opposite field shot. It was that bomb to left center. But the reason I say it was Piazza-esque like is because of the follow-through, the way he posed, the way he dropped the bat. It was Piazza-like, a big bounce-back game from Pete. Because even though Pete Alonso had the RBI double in the first inning on Friday, he had a very rough defensive day, and he came up in a couple of big spots in which he came up small, specifically the strikeout in the third inning and the strikeout in the eighth inning. So Pete, and I got a bunch of emails about this saying, hey, I know he had the RBI double. Pete Alonso's the leader in the clubhouse for the net negative. Well, I think Pete was able to at least alleviate that with the home run to make it 2-0. But the other missed opportunity was really in the seventh inning of this game, because even when they add the third run on the huge RBI double by Jeff McNeil, which he needed, we all needed it, because Jeff McNeil has to play. There's no other option. The idea of starting Luis Angel Acuna, no way. You're not doing that. And if you do it, it's not smart. So Jeff McNeil just has to play, and he has to finally hit. Like, there are certain situations with this team, especially now with one game left, where you just got to play your guys and hope they perform. Jeff McNeil's one of them. The RBI double he hit in the sixth inning was monstrous, because that had a chance to be another lost inning, a leadoff walk by Alonso. He goes to second on the balk. Nimmo can't advance him. Marte grounds out. So a huge hit by McNeil to make it 3-0. But the other missed opportunity was in the seventh inning, because even with a 3-0 lead, knowing the likelihood that Mendy's going to go to this bullpen, and who knows what happens, leadoff hit by Mauricio. Tyrone Taylor lays down the bunt, which I agreed with. Had no problem laying down the bunt. And Lindor rips one. He's ripped a lot of balls in this series, some of which into bad luck. This one was in a bad luck because Marcy made the great catch. And then you get the Soto walk and another big opportunity for Pete Unfortunately, Alonso doesn't come through this time. So at 3-0 in the seventh inning, is that enough offense? I mean, honestly, no. On most days, it isn't. Luckily, Clay Holmes and the Met bullpen bailed him out because 3 runs is not enough. Now, luckily, they added the insurance runs in the ninth inning, which turned out to not matter because when they were trying to add on in the ninth inning and they had the 2 on and Lindor came up, RBI single, Soto walked, they scored on a wild pitch. They had more. They had a chance for more. My hope in breaking the game open, because at that point, believe it or not, I was actually very confident they were going to win. I was past the irrational, they're going to blow this game thoughts. 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. I felt Edwin Diaz is not blowing that game. So I felt good. I mean, I'm glad they added insurance runs. It never hurts. But my hope was, would they add enough insurance runs for Carlos Mendoza to say, you know what, Edwin, we don't need you today. We're going to go to Ryan Helsley, who, again, 5 straight outings, it may be 6 now, but definitely 5 straight outings or more in which he hasn't allowed a run. Helsley is better. He's not fully in the circle of trust. It's why you didn't see him earlier in this game. But with a 5-0 lead or a 4-0 lead in the ninth inning, would I have been willing to allow him to start the inning? Sure. Because the fresher Edwin Diaz is, the more effective and the more you could use him. Because game 162 that's it. It's game 7 of the World Series. You have to treat it as such. And that means Edwin Diaz may come into a game in the 5th inning. It's not crazy. For those that think I'm crazy, remember back to last year's Game 3 wildcard series against the Brewers. Remember how early Mendy went to him? Why not? Season's on the line. You're not saving him. Sometimes, if you don't get a big out in the 6th inning or a big out in the 7th inning, there won't be a 9th inning for Edwin Diaz to pitch. So I had hoped after the Lindor RBI hit, after the wild pitch scored Tyrone Taylor, maybe you could save Edwin Diaz. Now, I don't blame Carlos here. It's one of those things where I'm not going to rip him for it. Like, I get, hey, I'm not effing around. I get it. We can't lose this game. I'm not getting too cute. I'm going to go to Edwin Diaz. I'm going to get the last 3 outs, and we're going to go to a bar and watch Reds Brewers. I get it. But that was my thought, at least, in the 9th inning as they were trying to break this game open, which is, hey, is there a way they may not have to use Edwin Diaz? He goes to Edwin Diaz. Luckily, he threw very few pitches. I'm looking at my scorecard now. I got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 12, 13 pitches. So I guess a little bit more than I thought, but pretty average. Like, he didn't have to throw 25 pitches. And that would have been my concern. Now, it wasn't going to affect Mendy using him in game 162. He's going to use him no matter what. I mean, all hands are on deck when your season is on the line. But it would just be easier, and he'd likely be more effective if he's not having to throw 35 pitches. Luckily, he didn't. They sealed the deal, and they won this game. And Clay Holmes, I mean, not enough positive words can be used to describe him. He delivered when the Mets needed him the most. Now, unfortunately for Clay, unfortunately for him, there's a really good chance that the Mets are going to miss the playoffs. I mean, if we're all going to not lie to each other, it is still very likely the New York Mets are not going to make the playoffs. And so Clay Holmes' dominant performance is just going to live in that same bucket as John Maine and Johan Santana. And everyone's making the comp, and I get it. I mean, it's an easy comp to make. Why wouldn't you? This weekend, not fully, but has had similarities to 2007 and 2008. The one big difference, as we sit here in the 8th inning of Reds Brewers, is that the Mets aren't getting help on Saturday. Go back to 2007. This one I actually remember much more vividly than 2008. But in 2007, the John Maine game, we all remember, the no-hitter broken up on the swinging bunt by Paul Hoover. The fight between Miguel Olivo and Jose Reyes. It was a very memorable blowout on a Saturday afternoon. But the other thing I remember is that on Friday night, the Mets had lost control by losing the Friday game to Miami, or Florida at the time, and the Phillies had won. We're talking about the National League East in 2007. So the Mets went into Saturday's game, a game out. So as well as John Maine pitched, I remember leaving Shea Stadium with that same empty feeling that I had after this game, which is, that's great. I'm glad they won, but we don't control our future. Joe and I did a Saturday show from the Astoria Studios in 2007, and it was during the Phillies Nationals game. So we did basically a long extended post game after the Met win, but also had like the Philly game on in the background. And I remember very vividly being on the air while the Phillies lost that game. And the excitement that filled my bones, the excitement that even filled Joe's bones of like, oh my God, all right, we got control. Like, all we got to do is win. If we win, at the bare minimum, there's a one-game playoff. Because there were a lot of weird tiebreak scenarios from 2007 that maybe I'll get into later, depending on how long we do this, Rico. But we got control back on Saturday night with the help of the Washington Nationals. And then we all know what happened Sunday afternoon. We don't have to rehash it. But bottom line was Tommy Glavine crapped the bed. That's my summary. And on the Phillies side, the only thing I remember about the Phillies winning, because you also had that, hey, well, if the Phillies lose, we're still there. All I remember was who got the last out. It was Brett Myers. I think he was their closer that year. Brett Myers got the last out. He was celebrating, and obviously it was a horrendous ending to one of the worst collapses of all time. Now go to 2008. I don't remember this one as vividly, but in 2008, Friday night, we lose to the Marlins. Same thing. We lost control, not only of the division, we were already trailing in the division, but the wild card. We went into Friday night's game tied with the Milwaukee Brewers for the National League wild card spot. And I think San Diego as well, something like that. And upon losing that game, same thing, lost control. So on Saturday, when Johan Santana made his famous start, 3 days rest, torn meniscus. Keep that in mind about Johan's performance, a complete game victory against the Marlins on a Saturday afternoon. 3 days rest, how rare is that? Torn meniscus in his knee. The Brewers were starting their game right after the Met game was over, and we needed them to lose to get control back. Otherwise, you could win Saturday or Sunday, and it's too late, which is unfortunately the situation we're in now. And then Sunday comes along. CC Sabathia delivers for the Brewers on 3 days rest, and the Mets lose and close down Shea Stadium in pathetic fashion. If the Mets had won that game, they were going to host the Brewers the next day in a one-game playoff. So, again, it wasn't like we were automatically going to the playoffs, but there would have been a game 163. So 07 and 08 had the same exact characteristics. Lose Friday, lose control. Win Saturday, and a little bit later, gain the control back, and then crap the bed on Sunday. So I say all of that to tell you that the Reds beating the Brewers on Saturday night is the first thing that changes in our history. It's the first thing in this weird, tortured past that we're all reliving that's actually different. That, of course, unless the Brewers rally and come back. Which, by the way, I'm still hoping they do. Like, I'm not telling this story to say, oh, see, good news. Hey, it's great that the Reds won. It's great that the Mets don't control their future on Sunday, because that's different than 07 and different than 08. I am not suggesting that, because if you really think about it, just because Friday and Saturday repeated itself doesn't mean Sunday is going to repeat itself. Give me that opportunity to have the Mets in a spot where if they win, they get in. I'll sign for that. And even if it ends horribly, which it probably would, I'd still rather that situation than having to sit there on a Sunday afternoon watching the Mets, hoping the Mets win, praying to the baseball gods the Mets win, but also simultaneously having to treat a Reds-Brewers game as equal to more important than the Met game. But that is something to keep in mind, because I think over the last few hours since the Mets beat the Marlins, There's been a lot of just comps to 07 and 08, and I get it, especially the pitching thing. It's really weird to think of John Maine, Johan Santana, and Clay Holmes. It really is like a Saturday spectacular performance. And for 2025 standards, Clay Holmes going 6 innings, allowing 1 hit and 0 runs, that is equivalent to what Santana did in 08 and what John Maine did in 07. And it's weird. And I know it scares a lot of people. It doesn't scare me. It's just more weird, I guess. And I'm happy that the good thing happened on Saturday. Because if the good thing didn't happen on Saturday and Clay Holmes crapped the bed and the Mets lost again, we'd be doing this Please Help Us Milwaukee watch party, not with at least the backup plan of Sunday, but with the season will officially be over. But Hoff, I saw you do it too. You tweeted the same thing out because we all thought the same thing, which is this is freaking wild that this franchise had Johan, it had Maine, and now it has Clay Holmes delivering in this weird Saturday performance against Miami.
I mean, if you really want to, we can go back to, I would say 161 from last year. It wasn't the pitching performance, it was Lindor, but like there was somebody that stepped up in 161. The Mets seem to have a great 161 in them. It's like opening day. Opening day at 161, you can count on the Mets, right? I mean, and listen, I watched and I was surprised, and I personally speaking wanted to pull him in the 3rd inning. There was times a little bit like later on in the 4th.
Would you have pulled him in the 3rd inning, by the way? Runner on, 2 on, 2 out, 2-0 lead in the 3rd inning. Were you at that point ready to say, I'm going to take Clay Holmes out of the game?
Well, yeah, and here's the reason why. I would have managed differently than Mendoza, because first off, I would have had people warming up from like as soon as someone was on base, definitely warming them up. But even probably before then too.
No, but you would have taken him out, is what I'm saying. So you would have pulled Clay Holmes in the 3rd inning.
I totally would have. I think I would have had it situated where once he walks somebody, he's already got the hook. I gotta be honest.
Well, thank God you didn't manage the team tonight.
Yes. Hey, listen, and I said this yesterday on my or this morning on my on-air show. I said, thank God I don't own the team because David Stearns would have been fired, Carlos Mendoza would have been fired. I mean, games at 161, we wouldn't have had nobody to be on the team. We would have to make all these call-ups. Forget about it.
It's why being a fan and then running the organization works out very, very differently. I don't know if I wouldn't have pulled Clay in the 3rd inning. I don't even think I would have pulled him in the 5th inning. I think I was a batter away, though, to be fair. So I would have had the bullpen warmed up. And I think, like, if Jacob Marcy, look, worst case scenario, Marcy could hit a 3-run home run, we'd be losing 3-2. But no matter what happened, I think in my mind, if Marcy got a hit, I probably would have made the early pull. And I think the same thing later in the game when he put himself into trouble and he got Xavier Edwards to ground out. Same kind of spot where I think I would have been aggressive right around there. I was thinking about this, and somebody fact-checked me because I tried to do the fact check, but I could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong. The New York Mets are going to play a game 162 in which they may make the playoffs. They may not make the playoffs, right? So I'm not talking about playoff seeding. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about a game in which you could either make the playoffs or miss the playoffs. So a game 162 with real relevance. And I was thinking about it. How many times in the proud history of this franchise have they played a 162 with meaning? So last year's 162, though there was seed meaning, because remember, after they won game 161, they had to play the second game with Atlanta. And if they had won that game, they would have had a different wild card round opponent. They would have played San Diego instead, right? We all remember that? That doesn't count. Because as you saw by Joey Lucchesi pitching, it didn't matter. So think about it. How many times in the history of this franchise have they played a game 162 with playoff implications? And I have only come up with 4. Okay? Now, there's some caveats here. In 1973, they never played a 162 because when they won the game before the doubleheader against Chicago, they clinched the division and they called off the next game. So 1973 is really close to qualifying, but there wasn't a game 162. So that's out. 1969, they had everything wrapped up. 1986, they had everything wrapped up. Even in 84 and 85, when the Mets were in real pennant races, they were knocked out by the time they got to 182. So here are the 4 years. You ready? 1998, in which the Mets had an amazingly epic collapse. They lost their last 5 games, including getting swept by the Braves at the end. And what was so painful about that, very similar or had similar qualities to this year, the teams around them, in that case, the Cubs and the Giants, were fumbling themselves. And so as I was sitting there over the weekend, it was like, my God, they could have made it. All they had to do was win one more game. They would have been in a 1-game playoff. So 1998 is one example where the game mattered. 1999, where they won the game against the Pittsburgh Pirates to force a game 163, which technically a 1-game playoff is, at least was when 1-game playoffs existed. So I got 98, I got 99. 2000, nope. 2001, nope. Then we got 07 and we got 08. The 2 that we've already talked about and the 2 that we remember. Those are the only 4 times in the history of the franchise where they played a game 162 with the playoffs on the line. Cut the seeding crap out. That's why I'm not including last year. With the playoffs on the line. And their history is obviously not very good. Very good in those games. They lost in 98 to the Braves. They won in 99, which was a weird situation. When they won the game, we celebrated knowing they were either going to play a 1-game playoff or go right to the divisional series. Had to wait on a Reds-Brewers, believe it or not, a Reds-Brewers rain delay before the Brewers lost to the Reds, which forced us into a 1-game playoff the next day. Funny how that works. And then obviously 07 and 08. So this is only the 5th time in the history of this franchise where we are going to sit down and watch a game 162 with the playoffs on the line. Doesn't that make things feel special, Pete?
No. It just means that the Mets history, how many times have they made the playoffs in general? Was it 11? Is it 11 seasons?
Well, I got to count it out. See, the number isn't off the top of my head. It's 69, 73, 86, 88, 99, 2000, 2006, 2015, 2016, 2022, and then 2024. So, yes, 11 times in their history. Yes.
It's embarrassing. But anyway, the fact that it's 11 times and it feels like it comes down to, this is the 5th time it's going to come down to the final day for us to even make the playoffs. It's like pulling teeth. Like, it shouldn't be this difficult. When you have a good team, it should be a lot easier. But it always feels like this Mets organization, no matter who's the owner, no matter who's the GM, no matter who's coaching the team, no matter what all-star we have, no matter what star player we have, it comes down to the end of the season.
Well, it's also, I think back to that Steve Cohen line from a year ago after they beat the Phillies. He's in the locker room and he says he wants to change the perception. He wants to change the way Met fans think. Missing the playoffs, which is the likeliest scenario as we sit here doing this Rico Brogna, is setting his goal back a long ways. A long ways. Like, last year's playoff run was great and probably helped kind of enhance the mental capacity of Met fans to think good things can happen, and also to change the LOL Mets moniker that exists. Missing the playoffs, not just because of how bad they've been since June, but the payroll, the expectations, the winning the offseason by signing Juan Soto, making a documentary about signing Juan Soto, all of those things will not only make us, the New York Mets, the laughing stock of Major League Baseball, and they will be, just the reality, but I think is setting back the hope of having us be confident. And I'd argue this with anybody. I don't feel I've been negative over the last 2 weeks. I feel I've been realistic. I feel like what I've said about this team is based on what I've watched. Like, I got a lot of crap for picking the under on runs scored for Friday's game. Why did I pick it? Was I picking it because I was being negative? I was picking it because I know them. I know the Mets. I know this team. It's been about a week and a half of me being convinced they're not going to make the playoffs. I didn't think that all year. You know, I remember sitting here a month ago saying, hey, look, we're still going to make the playoffs. I was confident. You go back and look at the tapes. I was believing. But the losing and the way they lost and the series losses and the pitching being consistently awful and having no one to trust, and Cedric Mullins being just an albatross whenever he's in the lineup, like all of that stuff adds up to where you just say, hey, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Not because I want to be negative, but I do admit, as much as I've been realistic in my conversations with everybody, I think that missing the playoffs is going to scar us as Met fans in a very big way, to where we're going to try to be as honest and open during the offseason, in spring training, and then when the season starts. But 2007 lives in our soul, and that was a long time ago. That was 18 years ago. 2025, and I've argued, is going to be worse if they don't make the playoffs, which, again, the likeliest scenario at this point. And I think it's going to scar us in a way in which Steve Cohen's goal of changing the way we think, dude, that's getting set back a decade, bro. Just to be honest.
Right. No. And here's the other thing about 2007, right? So 2007, 2008 took place. And what scarred us even more is so it was back-to-back seasons of missing on 162. And they took how many years to get back to the playoffs? It was embarrassing. And that's what can't happen here. Like, if this is the likely scenario that the Mets aren't in the playoffs, Steve Cohen better go scorched earth on David Stearns and say, I don't care how much money we have to spend. You better get 5 starting pitchers that can go 6 innings deep on a regular basis.
See, this is what I don't know. And a few people have asked me this. They've said, hey, George Steinbrenner would get angry after something embarrassing happened. Steve Cohen's owned this team for 5 years, but we don't fully know him yet. We don't. I think he's shown us a lot. I mean, last year, clearly during the offseason, he was not going to be defeated in the negotiations for Juan Soto. It was the first time he did that. I remember calling him out a year ago saying, look, we've created this character, but until he goes out and steals a big-time free agent, it's all just a story we tell ourselves. And he backed it up last year. Freaking backed it up. And obviously is backed up by having a huge payroll. So I'm not complaining about him. I'm just saying we've learned about him over the last 5 years. Here's what we don't know, though. How does he react to an embarrassment like this? I think firing people, specifically David Stearns, would be foolish. And don't take that as a defense of David Stearns. I'm not defending him. I'm just saying firing him would be stupid. And I don't think it's even on the table. I understand your emotions. I think we're all very emotional right now. I heard my man Joe B ranting against David Stearns over the yesterday or today. I forget the days now. And he's ranted about David Stearns to me. I've heard it. And I don't disagree with any of his criticisms. It's not about that. It's about that extra step of blowing things up. It'd be very, very foolish, because being a team president is not just simply about the trade deadline being good or bad, or the free agent signings being good or bad. It's about a lot of other things. And you don't fire a team president after 2 years. Even if the 2 years are bad, you don't fire a team president after 2 years. So I'm not saying Cohen should do that, and he shouldn't. And if he did, I think that's the bad George Steinbrenner, by the way. If that happens, it's not. But if that happens, I mean, that's maniacal. Maniacal? It'd be bad. It'd be bad. But does he react by doing what you did and says, hey, Dave, you better not let this happen again. I don't give 2 craps how high my payroll is. You better not let this happen. Our pitching was an abomination. Here's $100 million. Buy me something better. I don't know if that, and by the way, not saying that's going to happen either, or is Steve Cohen's response going to be, dude, I gave you $350 million and you won 83 games? Are you serious? I ain't giving you that again. Figure it out, bro. Figure it out. Like, this assumption that Steve Cohen would be so offended by the Met performance, he's going to, have a $900 million payroll. I think that's also based on just the story we tell ourselves. I admit I don't know. I don't actually know what his response is going to be, but I don't necessarily think his response is going to be, this was so bad, here's more of my money to spend. I don't think that's the answer either.
Well, I think they have to David Stearns is the baseball guy. He's the baseball genius, right? So Steve Cohen said from the get-go, he doesn't know anything. Not saying he doesn't know, but he doesn't know the ins and outs of this. He trusts his baseball people to make the right decisions. Did he, though, if this is the case, is it, hey, hire somebody else to be the GM? If you're president of baseball operations, hire somebody else to be the GM.
I think that was inevitably going to happen anyway, Pete. Like, I don't think that's going to change based on the failures of this season, because I think David Stearns has said before that he was going to hire a general manager. He didn't do it this year, obviously, but I think that that's something that's going to happen anyway. I think if they miss the playoffs, which is the likeliest scenario, I think they'll make changes on the coaching staff. I don't think Carlos Mendoza will be fired. And I think, Mendy goes on the hot seat. I mean, ask Willie Randolph how that works. You go right on that hot seat when you have a bad year like this. I think changes on the coaching staff, and I don't know what they do with the roster, but I have to admit something very depressing. So, Met game ends, watched it live, spent a lot of time with my family before the game, went to a birthday movie, which is a novel idea for a 5-year-old birthday party, because everybody gets crazy. Then you watch a movie for 2 hours so you can go to sleep, and then you eat the cake and you go home. Like, it's a great, great idea.
What movie did they choose, by the way?
Gabby's Dollhouse.
Oh.
Yes.
I don't know that movie. Did they rent out the theater?
Yes.
See, Anthony did that. I think when it was like 4 or 5. His movie, though, was Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Well, this was the not to gender everything, but it was a little girl's birthday party, and she likes Gabby's Dollhouse. Now, I'll admit, Spence, who went to the birthday party, didn't hate Gabby's Dollhouse. Like, he was watching it.
No, kids love everything, dude. That's why they're kids.
They went to a movie. So I get home. My wife understands right away, I'm going to watch this game live. And a lot of times on Saturdays, to spend more time with my family, I'll DVR this bad boy. I'll start it at 9 o'clock at night as we're doing the Rico live on YouTube. Right now, I'd be watching the Met game on DVR, but obviously different circumstances. So I look at my wife and I say, "Hun, I have to admit something." She says, "What?" I said, "Last night when I got home, I ate dinner and I started the game as quickly as I could because I didn't want to be too far behind on DVR. And I was watching the game in my kitchen. And I forget what inning it was. Oh, that's right. In about the 4th inning, I went upstairs to my TV room because I had caught up with the Met game, and I put all the other games on. As I sat down in the media room, the TV room that I have, within an inning, Brandon Sproat imploded, and the Mets imploded. And so I said, "Hon, I think I'm just going to watch the game in the kitchen and not move this time." Because, and she said, "I get it. I understand. I know." And then she says, "That really doesn't impact the outcome of a Met game." I said, "I know, but I would feel dirty getting up and doing the same thing that I did the previous day. I have to just stay in this kitchen." And I did. So Clay Holmes' shutout is because of me.
Now, question. Tomorrow, game 162, where you watching the game?
Yeah, I'm kind of screwed there, Pete, because I have to watch it in the TV room because there's so much going on. All the games are going on at the same time. So, look, if that's my fault, I'll live with it.
If game 162, if they lose, it's because Evan watched it in his TV room. Damn it.
Where I've watched every other Sunday game all year long. But here's what I was going to get to, what I'm afraid to admit. After the game is over, I'm relieved. Family goes upstairs. I go upstairs. Kids are doing something. I think they're going to sleep, actually, because they're tired from a busy day. My wife passes out. And at this point, I'm like, I guess we could start the Rico early. I'm like, screw it. Let's watch more Reds Brewers. As I was sitting there, I put my tablet on my belly, and I started doing research. Ask me the research I was doing, Pete.
Were you doing the research on or do you want me to take a guess, or do you want me to ask you?
Ask me. Evan, what were you doing research on?
What were you doing research on there, Ev?
The offseason. I was fully engaged in pitching trade targets. I was engaged in free agency. I was engaged in salaries. I was getting ready for offseason Ricos because that's how convinced I was, even after a win, that no matter what happens, it will end badly. That's how convinced I was. So I got to tell everybody in the audience, I am already ready to do these off-season Ricos. In fact, Can I give you a little tiny sneak preview?
Yeah, I guess.
So I was looking at starting pitchers. I was like, you know what? They're going to have to add some reliability to this rotation. I know Sean Manaea is still under contract. Kodai Senga is still under contract. Even Frankie Montas is still under contract. You've got Christian Scott coming back. You got all the kids. But I think we were all going to agree that despite the magnitude of arms that they have, or at least the amount of arms that they have, they're going to have to add some reliability. So I was looking at the young guys that are available. I was looking at the bigger guys that could be available. With the Pirates trade Paul Skeens. With the Tigers trade Tarek Skubal. With the Brewers trade Freddie Peralta. And I got to one guy because it's a story right now. It's actually a breaking news story that Sonny Gray is considering waiving his no-trade clause and accepting a trade away from St. Louis. And I got into the weeds on his contract. He's making $30 million next year. But because it's such a backloaded deal, the CBT is going to be $40 million, which means if you want Sonny Gray, it's going to cost you $40 million. And if you're in the tax, it's going to be even worse. And that's what I was thinking about Steve Cohen. If Steve Cohen's like, money be damned, then maybe they go out and acquire a guy like Sonny Gray. Anyhow, I want to read a quick email, and then we'll get to the ramifications for tomorrow. This is from Eli. Eli says, Evan, in the muck of the horrible loss on Friday and the possible end of our playoff hopes, I have to disagree with you that the 2025 Mets are the worst collapse in their history. 2007 was worse. The collapse 7-up with 17 left was fast and furious and unbelievable. This collapse has been totally believable, and signs have been everywhere since June. 2007 was unexpected and completely out of nowhere. I still can't believe they blew that season. This year, it seems like it's been inevitable. I think that all your points are fair, Eli, about the differences between the two collapses, because you're right. Like 2007 was quick, it was fast, and it was furious. Like they were having mostly a good year. Wasn't a great year. There always felt something off about the 07 Mets, even before the collapse. Not that I thought they were going to collapse, but there did seem something off. But I think that the slow death is actually worse. And I think you also have to factor in the payroll of this team, the expectations of this team. I know there were expectations in 07. They both teams got to the same spot. Obviously, the 06 team lost in the NLCS. The 24 team lost in the NLCS. So I get the similarities. But I think the slow death nature of it, I think the star power of it, I do think it's worse. I think that 07 was more stunning, if you want to define it that way, because you're right. I think we were all like in shock as we sat there when it actually did end. But I think, and I know there's a recency bias attached to this, so don't worry. We'll set the calendar for a 2030 Rico Brogna in which we look back on the 2025 Mets versus the 2007 Mets. But I do think in a lot of ways, with the missed opportunities, I think it's worse. Now, the difference is in everything, and we can't figure this because we don't know, is what happens next. What happens next always changes the perception of something that previously happened. I always love to use the Red Sox from 2003 and 2004 as a great example. They lost a brutal game in 2003. They lost a brutal series in 2003. They lost on an Aaron Boone home run. They blew a game 7. Because they won in 2004, I think it erases the pain of 2003. Now, it is official. This year is different than 07 and 08 because the Cincinnati Reds took care of business on a Saturday night and they beat the Milwaukee Brewers by a final score of 7-4. So we know our fate. Our fate is we are going to watch the Mets on a Sunday while simultaneously needing a Brewer team that has absolutely nothing to play for beat the Cincinnati Reds, who are fired up. The Cincinnati Reds lost their first 2 games to the Pirates, all seemed lost, and to their credit, they responded. They won a miracle game when they won the finale of that series. Remember the leaping catch made by Marte. They beat the Brewers on a Friday night with excellent pitching. They beat the Brewers on a Saturday night, which they withstand this huge moment with the bases loaded and 2 out in the 7th inning of a 7-4 game, staring in the eyes of blowing a big lead. And so my gut feeling tells me the Reds are going to win on Sunday. I mean, I don't know how anyone else would feel differently. The Brewers are starting Freddie Peralta, but I don't know how long he's going to pitch. The Brewers are in a spot in which everything's done. They're the number 1 seed. They know they're not playing till Saturday. So could they still give Freddie Peralta a regular start? Of course, because his next start's going to be 6 days later. So it probably behooves the Brewers to make it real and really to play a full game. Because, again, this bye week is still new in baseball, and the National League results have not been good for teams off byes. And I'm not saying this out of desperation. I'm being honest. I'm giving you an honest assessment that I think if you're the Phillies, if you're the Brewers, if you're the Mariners, I think have it wrapped up too. Yes, the Mariners have it wrapped up too. Where you know you're not playing in the wild card weekend, I think you should play a regular game. I don't think you should screw around. And I've mentioned that we benefit from the fact that there's only 27-man rosters now, or 28-man rosters now. So it's not as if you can sit everybody. But with all that said, it's very difficult to be optimistic just on the Reds part of things. Forget the Mets. I'll get to the Mets in a second. This is what always scared me, Pete. What always scared me is you never know with one of these teams. You don't know when they're going to get hot. And the Reds are on the brink of sweeping the Brewers on the road, and there's nothing we could do about it.
Well, here's the thing is, and I understand your pessimism with the fact that, the Brewers aren't playing for anything tomorrow. So I get it. Yeah, they don't have to play everybody. They don't have to, go out there and try to win that game. What does it really mean? I mean, sometimes there's a little pride. Sometimes there's hey, let's go out there and do our best. It also depends on who the sub players are. Whoever's going in after Peralta, is it someone who's trying to make the playoff roster? Is it something like that? So that's what you got to hope that these players on the Brewers have a little pride to them. Here's the one thing that I think you're wrong. I don't think it's a guarantee that the Reds are winning. I think if anything, the Brewers are going to win, and it's going to look that much worse when the Mets lose tomorrow.
So you're taking the negative approach of it won't be the Reds that cost us. It'll be us who cost us.
All you got to do is win. And in 2007 and 2008, they lost. It's going to be the same freaking story.
Yeah. Let's get to the Mets end of things, because obviously they have to win. As you pointed out, there's no backing in anymore, where the Mets won Friday, Saturday, and then got some help on Sunday, or whatever scenario you wanted to describe. They obviously have to win this game on Sunday. I agree with Sean Manaea starting. I want to start with that. I think that he is the only logical choice. Gary Cohen mentioned on the broadcast going with an opener. I don't see the purpose of it. I just don't. I mean, Huascar Brazaban pitches an early first inning against Jacob Marcy and Xavier Edwards. Does that really give you an advantage over just using a starting pitcher who's used to starting? I'm not confident in Sean Manaea. I was encouraged when he had the end of the Phillies start, and then he pitched well in the tag team game with Clay Holmes. But since then, he was ineffective. He was ineffective last Sunday. He was ineffective out of the bullpen. So I'd be lying if I told you I have confidence in Sean Manaea. I do not, but I think he's their best option. I don't think David Peterson was an option at all. Obviously, Jonah Tong on short rest wasn't an option. And like I said with the relievers, I just don't see the purpose. I think what you're better off doing, and this is the way Mendy's going to have to manage this, very similarly to what happened with Clay Holmes, is you got to go batter by batter. Sean Manaea is going to get the first crack at this thing. But any sign of trouble, you've got to go to your bullpen. And as far as, is it David Peterson? Is it Jonah Tong? Is it Nolan McLean? I think that your bullpen is fully activated and healthy and ready to go. Brooks Raley pitched 1 inning. Brooks Raley's available. I'd say Gregory Soto's available, but he stinks. Nobody wants to see him. Tyler Rogers is available. Edwin Diaz is going to be available for multiple innings. Ryan Stanek is available. Huascar Brazaban is available. So I think if Manaea is running into trouble in the second or third inning, I think you can be just aggressive with your bullpen. I don't think you have to go to David Peterson. In fact, knowing the situation we're in now, I'm not in any rush to go to David Peterson. Like, I think that you can try to get the 27 outs with Sean Manaea and your entire bullpen. It is a little nerve-wracking that Dylan Ross was finally called up with 2 games to go in the season, and you're going to ask him to make his major league debut in that kind of environment? I mean, you couldn't have called him up earlier? You couldn't have had him on the Syracuse bus like you had 40 other guys at some point this season? It's nerve-wracking when you make your major league debut. You're going to ask this kid to make his major league debut in an incredibly big spot? So I know he's on the roster, and there's a chance Mendy uses him, but I wouldn't be in any rush to use him just because I feel like you've got a better chance of getting big outs from Ryan Stanek and Huascar Braziman than you do a rookie that's never pitched.
My question to you is, because you said Sean Manaea gets the first crack at it, you go batter by batter type of deal. But, like, at what point in time, like, it was funny in the 3rd inning and I think in the 4th inning, there was a few times where it looked like there was, like, a ballet going on in the bullpen area, that there was, like, so many guys stretching and whatnot. No one was throwing, but everyone was stretching. I mean, how quick are you going to have guys get up and stretch? Are you going to have guys starting to stretch from the first pitch of the game? Are you having, once somebody gets walked, do you pull in Manaea? Because you really can't get yourself in a situation here where it's 2 men on, whether there's 0 outs or 2 outs, and then you go to the bullpen, and then they give up a base hit, and then the whole game's blown open. You can't allow any of that. It's got to be killed from the get-go.
Yeah. It's Game 7 of the World Series. You got to have everybody ready to go right away. Yeah, right away. You can't wait around. You know, sometimes you can wait around on a starter to figure things out. I don't think you have time to do it. I think Nolan McLean is a huge X factor in this game. I don't know how much he can pitch, and I'm not saying that based on the rookie status. I'm going to give the Mets the benefit of the doubt, and Carlos Mendoza the benefit of the doubt, that in a game 162 with your season on the line, you're not going to throw him less than you would because you're worried about his rookie status next season. So I question how far McLean can go, more so because he just pitched a couple of days ago. But I think he should be available. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be. He pitched on Wednesday, right? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I mean, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. He should clearly be available to be used.
What's his magic number?
I'm sorry, he pitched Thursday. I want to get that right. So that's 2 days of rest, which would make this his throw day. So I think he'd be available for an inning. What's your question? What's his what?
What is his magic number to hit 50?
Well, he threw 5 1/3 in his start, and he needed to go 7 1/3. So I think it's 2 innings. I think 2 innings would put him in that 50-inning area to where he wouldn't be a rookie.
Oh, can I just say something? Because I meant to bring it up earlier and yesterday, and I heard it again today, and it really bothered me. The fact that the reason why Ronnie Mauricio, and I don't mean to move on from the situation, we'll get back to this pitching, but the fact that Ronnie Mauricio was on this team for a month because they wanted to control him so they could have an opt-in or option for next season is extremely pathetic by David Stearns. And that's just another thing. Like, we're sitting here talking about Nolan McLean, 2 innings. If we need him, should we use him? But we can't because we want to have rookie control. This is pathetic now. Go and win the freaking game.
Well, so a couple of things. I wasn't even aware of that. Gary Cohn brought it up on the broadcast that if they had sent Mauricio down, they were going to exhaust his options so that next year he would be one of those players that doesn't have any options left, which basically means he's a lock to make the team, or you're trading him. He'd be a lock to make the team. You wouldn't have the ability to send him to the minor leagues. So I heard Gary Cohn say that. Obviously, Hoff's reaction is, this is ridiculous. How could you keep this guy on the roster where he basically had no role for a month just for that reason? I gave it thought, though, and here's where I'm going to disagree with you. Who did you want called up for Ronnie Mauricio? So far, I've only heard one good alternative, and that alternative was really from the last couple of days, and that was calling up a third catcher, because with Alvarez DHing, which we saw Friday and could have been an option a day earlier, it's just better to have a third catcher. And if you're not going to use Ronnie Mauricio, which he was barely being used, wouldn't you be better off with a third catcher? Other than that, you needed Jared Young on this team? Is that what you wanted? Or Jose Siri needed to keep his job? I just don't see. There was nobody banging on the door to where, oh my God, why is this waste of space on the team, on the roster? I never felt that way. I felt that Mendy was burying him. I certainly felt that. I felt as he was never getting any opportunities. And I think what's unfortunate when you don't let a guy play is that when you need him to play, which just happened due to the Beatty injury, he doesn't look ready. And he ended up going 1 for 4 in this game. He did have one hard hit single, but his other at-bats were terrible. His first 2 at-bats were atrocious. And remember, Mauricio was forced to have a huge at-bat last Saturday against the Nationals in that wild game that he had a chance to win. He had a chance to walk it off. So I think it's just bad managing to have a guy on your roster who never plays. I know sometimes we get really pissed off when crappy players are in the lineup. Like, why is that guy playing? It's true. If a guy's on your roster, you have to keep him somewhat active. It was amazing to me that when Ronnie Mauricio got the start on Saturday, you realized he hadn't gotten a start in a month. He hadn't started a game since the middle of August. He had 8 plate appearances in the last month. His last start prior to game 2 of this series, September 27th, was August 24th. And since then, he had a combined total of 8 plate appearances and was 2 for 7 at the plate. That's just not managing your roster well. But what I would argue with you, Pete, is, of course, the reasoning isn't good. Like, you have to put winning first, not thinking about optionality in 2026. But what I would counter with is, who did you want on the roster? Who needed to be here that Ronnie Mauricio was blocking? Because if you have a compelling answer, let me know. Excuse me, I'm burping. If you have a compelling answer, let me know. Who is it?
Well, here's the thing is, right? Like, you're right. Who do they currently have on the roster right now that they could have called up, that they could have moved Mauricio down? I mean, we kept people calling up Jared Young and stuff like that. That's not compelling. But there was this thing called, what was it called? Oh, the trade deadline. And you could have acquired a utility guy. You could have made moves there. They went ass backwards. And
yeah,
I know you're shaking your head, but
no, because I'll just tell you why. I'm not saying you're wrong, because obviously, could they have used Jose Caballero? Sure. Ronnie Mauricio's burial began in the middle of August. It was not before the trade deadline. So I think that things changed. I just think he wasn't performing. Beatty was. Vientos was showing a pulse. And I think that the way they were allowing who played, it just changed. I mean, the burial of Ronnie Mauricio is more of a middle of August thing, and that is well after the trade deadline. So I'm all for ripping the trade deadline. I just don't think that relates to this.
But you're talking about a guy in David Stearns who's super creative, who, I mean, I saw the list that you sent me of people that the bullpen arms that got DFA'd and brought back. It's just stupid of the amount of times that guys were sent down, brought back up, DFA'd, this little circle that he's got going on. You're telling me you couldn't be creative when Nathaniel Lowe got DFA'd? I know he's not that position, but you're telling me that there wasn't somebody else like Nathaniel Lowe who got DFA'd?
I'm not disagreeing. I don't think that's the argument. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think the argument is, since the middle of August when the man got buried, who was he being sent down for? Because I think all that other stuff is fair. Again, not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I don't think it's related to this. Like, they made a decision in the middle of August. Ronnie Mauricio is not playing. He's not playing. And I'm not even saying the decision was wrong. I think the biggest wrong decision they made is that if a guy is on your roster, you have to get them at bats every once in a while. You have to. It's irresponsible. Because then when you ask, it's like, I'm going to give you the most random Nick mention of all time. Steve Novak was this excellent three-point shooter. You guys remember Steve Novak? Discount double check guy? Yeah. He was a great three-point shooter. There was this one game in which he didn't play. And then in the last 9 seconds, he was inserted. And Steve Novak had the ball in his hands. They had a game-winning 3, and he bricked it. And I remember saying, are you surprised? The guy was sitting on the bench the entire game. You thought Steve Novak was drilling a 3? It's the same thing. Once a week, if a guy is on your roster, it's a 162-game season. I'm not talking the last week of the year, the last 5 days of the year when we all want our best lineup. You have to get a guy at bats. To me, that's the criticism. Because in August 15th, whatever day you want to pick, where they said he is no longer a part of this, who are you calling up to send him down? That's the question. Bringing up other acquisitions 4 weeks earlier, I don't think is relevant. That's a Morashian move the goalpost kind of argument.
Well, I don't like that comparison. I'm offended now. But I get your point, and you're right. That they had no one. You could have called up Carson Bench.
He's not. He wasn't ready. He wasn't hitting down. He was not ready. They're not ready.
Well, but neither was Mauricio. And listen,
that's not true. That's not true, bro.
Well, listen, I'm an advocate for Mauricio. I love the kid. I think the kid's going to be the best out of the three between Beatty, Mauricio, and Vientos. And here's the thing: is you basically used him like whatchamacallit, was it Shaw on the Cubs that went away to Charlie Kirk's funeral?
Matt Shaw.
Matt Shaw. Yeah, like no one knew he wasn't even there. That's basically Ronnie Mauricio. No one knew if he was there or not. It's embarrassing to have somebody on your roster and basically act like he's nothing.
Yeah. So Ron, what was crazy though is let's get back to Ronnie Mauricio starting the Saturday game. He did not have to start game 2 of this series. He started game 2 of this series because the New York Mets are making something very, very obvious. And we just have to pick up on it. They're done with Mark Vientos. They're done with him. I got killed in one email. It wasn't a lot of people that I was too hard on Vientos for the error he made in Chicago. Well, guess what? The Mets clearly agree with me because Mendy crushed him after the game. And now with Beatty hurt, logically, Mark Vientos was going to be the third baseman for this game against Gary Perez. And when they chose to start Ronnie Mauricio, I think it tells you two things. Number one, Mendy put a premium on defense, no question. And number two, I think they're done with him. Now, with that said, Sunday afternoon, with the Mets season on the line, I got to tell you what I think is their best lineup. Their best lineup will keep Ronnie Mauricio at third base. Okay? I put the same premium on defense. He did have a nice clean single in the 7th inning, and maybe these at-bats over the last few days will get him going. But Mark Vientos needs to be the designated hitter. Starling Marte has cooled off. Starling Marte is basically done right now. Mark Vientos, while he hasn't hit a lot, he's got the capability. He does. And we're talking about DHing him. And again, if the option is between Marte and Vientos, Vientos has good career numbers against Cabrera, who's making the start. I don't want to go nuts about career numbers, but if I'm making a call between Vientos and Marte at DH, which is, I think, the call that needs to be made, the answer is Mark Vientos. The rest of the lineup, I wouldn't change anything. I think it's Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, Vientos, McNeil, Alvarez, Mauricio, and Tyrone Taylor. The only other thing you could try to sell me on is Alvarez at DH and catching Luis Torrens and going really all in on defense and shutting down run games by having Torrens catch. But that if they do that, then they are done with Mark Vientos times 50. Because I think they're done with him as a defensive player. And if I had to guess right now, he ain't going to be on the roster in 2026. I think he'll be traded in the offseason. I hope it's for something good, but who knows? But I think that the message has been sent that they're done with him. But for me, I would start him at DH in game 162.
Well, if you did start Alvarez at DH, you could opt Mauricio down, play Vientos at third, and have Singer come up to be a backup. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, so you're still desperate to send Mauricio to the minor leagues?
Just to stick it to Stearns, be like, screw it. Have McClain pitch 3 innings tomorrow. I don't care. Screw all these goals that you have so that you save draft picks and whatnot. Come on.
Keep this in mind, all right? I don't want to minimize Ronnie Mauricio having options next year because when we're sitting here doing March 15th Rico Brogna's and Ronnie Mauricio's hitting 145 in spring training and we don't think he should be on the roster and he doesn't have any freaking options left, you're going to say to yourself, man, I wish he had options because there's no scenario where you're releasing him. You're not. So
Right.
he's making the team no matter what, unless a guy has options and he can go down to the minor leagues. So don't minimize it like it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that's a reason to keep a guy on the roster for a month. I just want to, and the same thing with the draft pick thing. Of course, Nolan McLean should pitch based on the need in game 162. No one in their right mind is going to suggest that after 2 innings or an inning and 2/3, you have to take him out in a 1-1 game in game 162 while the Reds are losing 7-2 because you're thinking about a draft pick. Obviously, that's lunacy, but adding a potential draft pick does matter. That guy could turn into a franchise player 10 years from now. So
I can't wait 10 years from now. How about this year? How about next year? I sound like Joe Benigno. Here's the thing is, I'm just telling you right now.
But before you continue, I didn't say hurt yourself. I made it very clear.
No,
Don't hurt yourself. I'm just reminding you that it's not like that stuff doesn't matter. Doesn't mean I would make decisions based on it. It just means don't minimize it like, first round, who cares? Who needs that?
Well, if you think this is crazy, just get ready for the first off-season Rico where I tell you who I'm going to trade and who I'm going to keep. And I think that's going to surprise most people because there's many names that I'm completely done with, and I don't want everyone to see wear a Met uniform. So I'm sorry.
It's going to be fun. I mean, I've written down like 150 different off-season Rico ideas. And you know what? To every single person who has downloaded the Rico Brogna or is listening live right now on YouTube, where are you going to be on November 5th and November 17th when we're breaking down the left-handed relievers the Mets could go after? Y'all ain't going to be listening, but some of you will, and we appreciate the loyal ones. Let me read some of your emails to ricob@gmail.com. Angelo writes, Evan, the Mets, as we know, are 0-66 when trailing after 8 innings. We should have never been fighting for a playoff spot given our team. But imagine if we were 1-65 or 2-64 or 3-63, which is pathetic as that is anyway. But at least it wouldn't give us 1, 2, or 3 wins out of 66. We'd be in the playoffs right now. That's what really blows my mind. Just one more win could have made all the difference. Pathetic. Angelo, I'm going to give you advice. I'm going to give everybody advice. That will drive you nuts. Because you can do that with individual games. You can do that with individual decisions and say, boy, if that goes differently, we're in the playoffs. Or if that goes differently, we control our future. Baseball is a long-ass season that features a lot of weird things. Sometimes you win games you shouldn't. Sometimes you lose games you shouldn't. And sometimes your manager does something stupid that costs you a game or whatnot. If you go back and think about all the little things that could be changed, you'll drive yourself nuts. Tommy Rose with the ultimate question. I think we could all agree that if somehow, by the grace of God, the Mets make it to the playoffs, they're allowed to celebrate. But it's got to be with flat champagne. Tommy brings up a point that I know a lot of people are wondering. If by some miracle the Mets make the playoffs, are they allowed to celebrate, considering how pathetic this run has been? Hoff, if by some miracle the Mets make the playoffs, the Reds lose, the Mets win, they're in, they're playing the Dodgers on Tuesday, are they allowed to celebrate with champagne?
Yes. I think that no matter what, and I've said this forever, you can't take it away. You made the playoffs. Like that's the one thing I got to give Aaron Boone credit for. I heard him after the Yankees made the playoffs, he's like, we had a checkbox. We made the playoffs. That's the first thing. Don't let anybody take that shit away from you. Enjoy this moment. And the Mets, no matter how disgusting and how ridiculous of a season it is, if they find a way in 162 to make it to the playoffs, get wasted, take your shirt off, get crazy, folks.
I agree with you. Not with the get wasted part because they are going to have to play in 48 hours. But I think making the playoffs in baseball is still an accomplishment, and it should still be celebrated. And if you do it with 82 wins or 92 wins or 102 wins, it's still an accomplishment. For the Giant fans out there, I don't mean the San Francisco Giants, the New York Giant fans. In 2020, you guys came very close to winning the NFC East with 6 wins. You were allowed to celebrate that. You won the division. I get 6-10 is sad and pathetic, but you won the division. So I do believe if by some miracle the Mets make the postseason, which I think the odds sit at about 10% right now, they are allowed to celebrate. I will leave you with this factoid from Igor. Are you ready for this? And this is the ultimate kiss of death that you know the Mets are cooked. Are you ready? The Milwaukee Brewers have not been swept at home all season long. Not once. Just in time to screw us. That's from Igor. Igor, thank you for that piece of information, because that just confirms that the Cincinnati Reds are taking the brooms out on a Sunday afternoon. The only question is, are we losing too? So let's make some official last predictions. The next Rico Brogna will be after it's all said and done. It'll be on right after the Met game and the Red game. So once both games are final and the fate has been sealed, we will certainly be on the air. And you don't have to worry about rain delays because both games are in domes. So we're in a very good spot in that regard. Pete, how does this end?
I know that the Mets are losing tomorrow. That's a definite. It's just whether or not the Reds find a way to win. I think the Brewers are going to win, which is going to make it sting that much more when the last out is made by the Mets and they're not on top. That's going to hurt a lot more.
Yeah, I've been consistent. We're not going to make the playoffs. I had predicted on Evan and Tiki on Friday that the Mets were going to lose Friday, the Reds would win Friday, the Mets would win Saturday, and the Reds would lose Saturday. So that's the one thing I've gotten wrong. And then on Sunday, it would follow the same script as 07 and 08, and we'd lose. I kind of lean towards both bad things will happen. The Reds will win, and we will lose. And maybe it'll make things easier because then there won't be as much regret in terms of the final day of the year. It'll just be, they won, we lost, wasn't even close. We'll still be pissed, obviously, because the Mets will have missed the playoffs, and it'll be a massive disappointment. So I'm going to officially say the Mets will lose game 162. They will finish this season 83-79, and the Reds will take the brooms out and beat the Brewers. So we'll end up finishing a game behind the Cincinnati Reds. That's my official prediction. And as always, I hope I'm wrong. I am just giving you an honest thought on how I think this thing ends. So
I feel like I want to cry right now. You make me very upset.
I'm sorry. Well, man, you never know. Maybe we're all idiots, and we're going to be doing a giddy, happy, 7 p.m. Rico Brogna. The Mets are going to the playoffs. Either way, be on alert. We plan on doing episode 560 right after it is all over, except the crying. So join us for the crying in the series recap and the season-ending edition of Rico Brogna. We appreciate you listening. Remember to download and subscribe and rate and do whatever stuff you do with podcasts. And, of course, subscribe to the WFAN YouTube page so you'll never miss a live edition of Rico Brogna. All right. Light the candles. Say your prayers to the baseball gods and hope for the best. Thanks for listening to Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.